box plot is another graphical representation of data. But what I think is the most important thing about a box plot is a graph of the 5-number summary, a way of visualizing where the data is. And to those who aren't familiar with them, they seem really strange and really weird. But let's just go ahead and create a couple box plots since we already have all the work done. But if you needed to create a box plot, the first thing you want to do is figure out what's your median, what's your quartile, what's your first quartile, what's your third quartile. Basically, step 1, find the full 5-number summary. Once you've done that, that's all the work you need. Then it's just a matter of graphing those numbers. So let's make a box plot for these two. Again, the same situations we've been working on. What about the ages? What about the GPAs of our 10 students that we've been working on? So the median age of our students was 19.5, first quartile 19, and the third quartile was 23. And basically, in a box plot, it starts with a box in the middle, which is describing the interquartile range. So the interquartile range is actually the width of the box plot, where the left-hand side is the first quartile, the central line in the middle of the box is the median, and then the right-hand side of the box is the third quartile. And you have two tails or lines that extend from the end of the box plot, which represent going all the way to the maximum and the minimum. But basically, if you look at it, it's like 5 lines. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Those are all the same as the 5-number summary. So basically, you're just going to be putting these onto a graph, making a box around the quartile, the interquartile range, putting a line through the median, and then 2 little lines going out to the minimum and maximum. So let's go ahead and make a box plot for the age of our students. And kind of like a mathematical graph, you have an x-axis and a y-axis. Box plots can be done vertically or horizontally, just like histograms or other graphs. It doesn't necessarily matter. Let's just go ahead and make our first one horizontally for the age. So let's just say the x-axis is our age. And the y-axis doesn't necessarily have any meaning. As you see over here, there's no scale to it. It's just kind of like we got a box and lines coming from it. So in order to do this, we're going to need to make sure we have all values from 18 to 37, since that is our full interquartile range. So let's just start with 18 over here. We're going to have 19, 20, etc. And this is going to go all the way up to 37. And since 37 was such an extreme outlier, it would take me quite a while to get all the way to 37. So I'm just going to go ahead and not label it all the way as we're starting, just because it's not very practical for this example. But basically, let's start with our box. The box is going to encompass quartile 1 to quartile 3. So from 19 to 23, that's where we want to make our rectangle. The line in the middle of the rectangle should go through the median, which was 19.5 in the case of age. So it's going to be pretty close to the left-hand side, which is fine, but it's not necessarily right in the middle of that rectangle. And then the lines are going to extend to the so the minimum age was 18, so that's not particularly very far on the left. And you can see the lines were dotted here. That is not, I usually don't see them as dotted, but you know, there's different ways of doing it. And then the right hand side will extend all the way to the maximum. The maximum was 37, so I'll just go ahead and make this quite long, getting all the way up to 37, being a little bit poor with my graph here. But in this case, our box was, it looks like it's very long to the right. And this actually brings up an important point about a box plot. The point of the box plot is to visualize where the majority of your data is. And even though the right-hand side is very long, it doesn't mean that there's more data in this section. Again, it kind of like before, the quartile 1 to quartile 3 means half of our data is in here. The box encompasses half of our data. So what you can think is the bulk of our data is in here. The median is even more central. Since the median is so close to the left-hand side, that means that most of our data is in this group right here. And similar, actually, this graph looks very similar to this random one that I put on the packet. Again, this one would read very similarly. It means like 25% of your data is here, 25% here. The wider it is, actually, that means the more spread out it is. And that's not necessarily intuitive. So that's why I'm kind of going through it in a detailed way. And again, when it's very, very long like this, that means that there's not very much. There's, again, only 25% of the data falls in this kind of group here. And it just means it's more spread out. And again, this would mean there's quite a few students in the 18 to 19 bracket, quite a few in the 19 to 20 bracket. And as we know, when we were looking at that, we had a lot of younger students in our college class. So let's do the same for GPA. We have our 5-number summary already made up. So let's do it vertically this time instead, just to change it up. So here I'm going to put my tick marks vertically, make them vertically instead. And I want to make sure I'm encompassing the whole data, 2.2 to 3.9. It might just be simpler to use 2.0 to 3.0 or to 4.0. Let's just put 4.0 up here, 3.0 in the middle, 2.0 at the bottom. And I can kind of do some in between, 2.5, 3.5, so on, just to give me a basis on starting. And if I'm doing a vertical box plot, I just want to make sure my rectangle is vertically aligned instead. So starting with my quartiles, 2, 5, and 3.8. So 2.5 is going to be the bottom of my rectangle, and 3.8 will be the top. Because again, the box encompasses the full thing. And again, if you want to calculate the IQR, you can always just calculate the IQR by finding the width of the box. Like looking here, 19 to 23, the IQR is 4 as we calculated. And that gives you, right away, you can see it very visual as the width of that box. The median was 3.55, so that's going to be right about here for my line. And you could label it if you wanted, but typically they're not labeled. You just kind of eyeball it. The max GPA was 3.9, so this is going to be really short. And the lowest GPA was 2.2, so this would be a little bit lower, something right about there. Oops, I made that really wide. Usually you don't make the tail quite that wide. But again, doesn't have to be exactly the same way. There are variations in the way that people create these, but that's the most standardized way. It sort of looks like a syringe randomly. I don't know why I bring this up. Maybe because I just got vaccinated a couple hours ago. Anyways, that summarizes box plots.